To share with us, I'd like to welcome August de los Reyes. August is a designer with Microsoft, an academic from Harvard University, soon to be Dr. August. So I'd like to, without any further ado, welcome August de los Reyes. Enjoy his presentation, and big hand for August de los Reyes.
Thanks, Carlos. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out and listening to what I have to say. My name is August, and a lot of people ask, yes, I was born in the month of August, on the 17th, to be precise. I'm a designer, and I live in Seattle, although my personal history is a bit more complicated than that. It could probably take up a whole presentation on its own. I work for Microsoft in the Windows organization in a small strategic group that deals with hardware. And what we try to do is elevate the experience of Windows through hardware. And as you know, Microsoft doesn't make PCs, so our projects deal with influencing the rest of the hardware industry. So, the work that my team does is kind of anonymous and very low-key. But we do big things, like my old boss was responsible for popularizing the scroll wheel on the mouse. And then my buddy Carl, who used to sit next to me, he was the one that helped decide the colors of the connectors on the back of the PC. So you can see the nature of the selfless nature of the projects that we do. But if our team fulfills its mission, then we won't need keyboards and mice, because one of the things we're trying to do is create more natural ways of interacting with computers. One of the last projects that I did before Vista came out was working a lot on touch-based interfaces. And we went from sketches to prototypes to more prototypes, and then we integrated it with prototype hardware, and then handed it off to a hardware partner, and it's now out in the market as a Hewlett-Packard TouchSmart PC. And in fact, there's a local tie-in with this project because the touch technology on the screen comes from a local company here called Next Window, and it's really brilliant, cutting-edge touch technology.
User interface, user experience is actually critical to everything that we do. The user experience on a big screen is different than a little screen. The user experience on a device that only has a browser is different than on a device that has a browser plus richer display technology like Silverlight is still different again than what you can do on a full-fledged PC. And yet we have to focus in on this user experience. And we have to focus across software primarily, but also through to services, and increasingly to the way in which our software interacts with hardware. Everybody in this room is brought together today. To some degree, we all care about what kinds of user experiences and user interface we'll all be delivering over the internet. At Microsoft, I'd say we grew up with a culture and a focus on the function. A lot of software engineers, and we developed a whole culture and set of practices and the best ways to recruit engineers. And really over the last four or 5 years, one of the big areas of investment we have made is bringing in design talent. Design talent that can really help us do next generation user interface. We brought in one of the leading researchers in this area, a man named Bill Buxton, who'd been a professor at the University of Toronto.
Put your hands together and please welcome Bill Buxton.
And my book's about sketching, so I had to have at least one sketch in my talk. A lot of this stuff's about play. The way I characterize the kinds of things I'm talking about is that they're far too important to take seriously. The point I want to make here is that all of us have made walkie-talkies or played with walkie-talkies like this when we were kids, right? Where you just get a couple tin cans or a couple Dixie caps, you hook a piece of string. As long as you keep the string taut and not touch anything, you can have a two-way communication. Now, some of you might be gearheads and have realized that when you tore apart your father's car radio or got a couple just regular loudspeakers, if you hook up the two poles just with two wires, without any batteries or amplifiers, you can do the same thing. And now you can have this wire way longer. It can lie on the floor. Doesn't matter if it's touching anything, and you don't have to keep it taut. And again, you've got an intercom that doesn't consume any power, because by induction, when you speak into it, you make the speaker vibrate. By induction, it creates an alternating current in the wire that drives the speaker at the far end. Try it. It's really fun. You should do it as just a project within your design studio. Now, that's something you can learn just because it's fun, or play with your kids. But the important thing is, there's a really, really deep lesson in this. And that's this. Every loudspeaker is also a microphone. Remember what I said? Every loudspeaker is also a microphone. Every microphone is potentially also a loudspeaker. Because think about it. You don't have one Dixie cup here and another one there. I mean, you could do that, but it would be totally wasteful. Talk, 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 talk. What did you say? Talk, talk, talk. What did you say? The same Dixie cup is the speaker and the microphone. And it's true with regular loudspeakers too that are in your radios. And so the only minor leap of faith you need to make is, what if the same thing was true with displays? What if every LCD panel, or light-emitting polymer, or e-ink display, take your pick, what if every display was also an imager? Well, the fact is, I asked that question back around 1995 when I was at Xerox PARC, and they said, well, actually, Bill, it can be. It's exactly the same circuitry. If we take the scan bar out of this great big Xerox scanner, it was called Docutech at the time, and you made it two-dimensionally on another layer, you've got a high-resolution display. And then they went ahead and they built one. It was called the DPIX. It was the first 300 dot per inch color display ever made. Phenomenal. It was made from a scanner. The fact is, we can do this now. And the thing that drives me crazy, and a lot of the stuff I do at Microsoft, is work with display manufacturers of the emerging types of displays and say, as long as you think you're making a display, all you're going to do is make bigger TV sets, and you're basically insulting all of your potential customers by saying you're just a sponge to absorb the crap we put on the screen, as entertaining as it might be. This notion that you're an active, creative element that can engage with what's on the screen, with documents and hands and so on and so forth, you're leaving out, you're eliminating that as an option. And frankly, I think that's too bad. You're making blackboards and ignoring the chalk. And so what's happening now is that's changing. So there's an easy way to do this, and there's work still up at the U of T doing this and all around. The bottom left-hand image here is from a friend of mine, Jeffrey Hahn, who started doing this stuff at NYU. And the work above is the Microsoft Surface. And in both of these cases, the way that the display is both a display and input device is that you're projecting onto the surface with visible light, and you're illuminating the display surface from below with infrared. And so when you touch, which is invisible, when you put your hand on it, the infrared reflects back to a camera which is only sensitive to infrared light, and you're able to track the hands. And so you've got multi-touch going on there. But I'll come back to that. But the main point is, no matter how we implement it, I'm telling you, not only are big displays going to be cheap, not only going to be ubiquitous, but a large number of them, and the more I get my way with the manufacturers, the more likely it's going to happen is they're going to be bidirectional. So think about displays in anything you're thinking about as not having RGB pixels, which you were all taught. No, RGBI, 4 pixels, red, green, blue, and imaging. And if you watch carefully, you'll see that Sharp and Toshiba have both announced and demonstrated LCDs that are not quite commercially available, but this stuff on LCD types of technologies. But now when you can image on the surface, if you can start to do some interesting things. And this is where the interaction space becomes really interesting, and we move out of the realm of the graphical user interface.